I think an important thing to note is that while this event is happening here in Sydney, the event is happening simultaneously in Italy and throughout the world. And it's not by chance that the Istituto Cervi, which is the foundation which continues the work of the anti-fascist work of the Cervi family, has dedicated this year's activity to support for the people of Gaza and the Palestinian resistance. So tonight we'll also, in the tradition of the pasta, it is a free event, and there are people here and organisations which have contributed to that being the case, that the pasta is served free and you're able to receive that. But we will be asking for donations, and the donations are going specifically to support the children in Palestine and help them to have some relief from the torture and massacre that is occurring and the famine that is occurring every day in that place. Obviously, we are not immune to the existence of and the threat of fascism even today. As we speak, there are people around the globe who are resisting fascist forces, fundamentally quite often in the realms of colonisers, people trying to deny people their self-determination, their right to self-determination, their right to actually determine their own future. And we have a range of flags outlined at the back there which cover areas of Sahara, West Sahara, Papua, Yemen, Sudan. Those struggles are on every day. And they are unfortunately out of the mind's eye quite often because of the way the media works. And we know that on a daily basis, those sufferings, those repressions continue to occur, and we should never lose sight of that. And we need to have a critical eye of the media. And the question of colonisation in this country has still not been resolved. So when we think that Australia is immune to and not... apparently people are asking other people to be quiet. So if people could keep their conversations down just for a sec. Yep. So Australia itself is not immune from, and has never been immune from, and has not always been fascist-free in its own way. Colonisation, and the continuation of colonisation is in itself a form of fascism, and we should never forget that. So until our First Nations peoples have the right to self-determination, the right to their land and the right to compensation in the way that they see fit, and the resolution to and the recognition of their truth and how they want to present their truth, we will never heal this country, nor can we stand in international stages and declare ourselves to be a country that supports freedom and self-determination and anti-fascism. Obviously, the current situation that we are all confronted by, in particular, given the famine that's occurring, the constructed political famine that's occurring in Gaza, and the continuation of the occupation of Palestine territories, is the media and its capacity to cover things up is unbelievable. So the Knesset, the Israeli inverted commas parliament, yesterday passed a piece of legislation declaring sovereignty over the West Bank and Cisjordania. Now that is saying to the world that we will be colonising, taking the Palestinian state out of existence. So for countries to say we recognise the Palestinian state and the two-state solution, what is the response that we make to the Israeli parliament that passes legislation declaring sovereignty over lands that belong to the Palestinian people under all international law? So where do we stand on that? And I think if we are true to where we stand against it and call on authorities, Australian authorities, to oppose that and raise those concerns directly with the Israeli government and to raise them in all international forum where it's possible. One last thing I'd want to say around all these issues is, of all this, we cannot ever shy away from the fact that, you know, democracy is a constant challenge for us, both in terms of what we define as democracy or what others define democracy being for us. So I think we need to be more critical when someone says what a democratic state looks like. For the fact that people might have the capacity, and very restricted capacity quite often, to go and vote once every 4 years, does not make a country democratic per se. And the tendencies under those countries, you know, what's happening under that facade of what democracy is, we see it unfolding in front of us, both across the globe. We have what's happening in the United States of America with 27% of the population that has the right to vote, that voted for Donald Trump. While at the same time, while you have a whole range of restrictions on people's capacity to vote, a whole range of restrictions on the whole, in the process of restricting and denying, you know, democratic sites for communities to organise and resist and participate, just as happened in Australia. We have a government in Italy which is presided over by a Prime Minister and a government of the Fratelli d'Italia, which is a party that comes out of the fascist tradition of Italy. We have ministers in Italy who proudly display the statues of the head of Mussolini in their office and call him a great man. This is where we've ended up. We have to be vigilant against fascism in all its forms and any sense of revisionism that basically says that there were good aspects to fascism. There are no good aspects to fascism, and we need to be clear about that. And every time someone dares to even mention that, even in our context of Italy, we have to stand up and fight against it and resist. I'd just like to finish off by saying that we will continue to do this event, and we hope to make it a much larger event going forward, because I think there are a whole range of people who reside in Australia who have suffered at the hands of fascism firsthand and are still dealing with the consequences of it, and our alliance with our First Nations brothers and sisters. But I think the important thing for us all to do tonight is to make sure that every conversation we have, every time someone raises an issue around what's happening in Gaza, that we make it clear that if humanity is unable to understand what's a construction of famine as an instrument of war, and it needs to be declared unacceptable in any form, then we are all culpable. And as many of our Jewish friends who have written, and Australian Jewish friends who have written in papers recently, who are either the survivors of or the children who are survivors of the Holocaust, they cannot understand how a government that purports to utilise and speak in their name can undertake such atrocities to starve people to death as an instrument of war. We will support not only the right to self-determination, but the resistance of the Palestinian people to their land, and that they will be able one day to walk on their land and determine their future, and not be determined by others outside of their land. Freedom to Palestine.